We need to start talking about Donovan Mitchell in a different class.
I agree.
You know what I'm saying? He's not run-of-the-mill all-star player. That's superstar stuff he was doing tonight.
Since the bubble, all season this year since the bubble.
That's put a team on his back. I am clearly the best player on the team that had the best record, and now I just watched it in the first round against the Grizzlies. You saw it in game one. You saw it last year in the bubble. They sure as hell didn't lose to Denver because of him, you know, and the performances that he was putting up over and over again. He was freaky great. And you remember, you know, it was 2 years ago that he had so much pressure on him as kind of being the guy. This is the year before they got Conley. And, you know, he went down in flames in the playoffs. And I remember us having the conversation like, yo, man, you got to take your playoffs scars. And one of the things that we got to remember is take a step back here. Guys in their second and third years in the NBA aren't supposed to be the man. Yeah. Like, we're getting too spoiled because of what Trey's doing, because of what Luka's doing, because of what Donovan's doing. It usually takes a long time before you're the guy, you're the best player or the leading scorer on a team that is expected to win playoff games.
Rewind even a year before that, replacing Gordon Hayward for Boston. You know, the face of the franchise, leaving suddenly, and then Mitchell gets drafted into that situation and is asked to be the guy. He's thrown into the fire. He's inefficient. He's working through it. And all those trials and tribulations, those losses and those hits he's taken have all allowed him to gain experience and reps and big games against tough defenses, game planning for him. And it led him to become the player we saw in the bubble, the player we saw this entire season. And we're about to see what he can become in this postseason, because this Clippers team, at some point, you got to think they're going to stick Kawhi on him. Right?
Well, at
some point.
They did in the fourth, and he had a couple of moves where he got there, and then they just switched too easy. You know, Clippers, they did that last year. They did that last year with the huge Luka shot. You remember when we talked about that a lot? It's like, why are you just letting this happen?
Yeah.
And they just let the switch happen, and that's how he ends up with Kennard, because they actually did have Kawhi on him at the top, and then they ran some screen, and he just passes him off to Kennard, and it's like meat to the lions. And other thing about why we got to start talking about him differently is, you know, putting the team on his back the same way. And that, you can see the intangible. You know, we always talk about the things that don't show up in a box score. This guy, when they had him mic'd up tonight, that was a moment. And they may never have him mic'd up again, and they may never be allowed to run. But for all that we complain about how we never really glean anything, you know, it's a huddle, and it's Nate McMillan saying, we got to defend. You know, and it's like, okay, great, that was cool. But, like, they
always have the worst coach clips. Like, it's never anything insightful. It's like, run, play hard, guys.
Yeah, we got to get good shots.
That's all they ever show.
Yeah,
they show the one clip of a coach saying the most basic possible thing.
Right. Whereas tonight, we get that clip of Mitchell where he's on the mic and he's talking to those guys, and you can see he's all fired up, and he's like, look, it's a fourth quarter. They just played a game 7 2 days ago. If we can make them quit here, they're going to just get ready for game 2. And I was like, damn!
I loved it.
All the smoke. Well, and he knows he's mic'd up. He knows he's mic'd up, you know, when he's saying that. And,
but you also don't think they're going to show, you know.
Maybe not.
That was probably borderline. I'm glad they showed it. I think TNT should show more stuff like that. And I think I'll also say this. I think teams and players should also be okay with showing some more stuff like that. What's wrong with a little bit of trash talk? It's great. It makes it more exciting for people watching. If it's more exciting for people watching, it means more people are going to start wanting to watch games live.
That's what, I mean, look, especially in the day and age of reality TV, which isn't even real. People eat up fake reality TV. That was as real as it gets. You're really getting to hear what a star player is saying to his teammates at a timeout when he's trying to get them amped up to go out there for the fourth quarter. And I'll be damned, he came out of that locker room in the second half and immediately had like 10 or 11 points. And then he did it again in the fourth quarter. Like, yo, just get on my back. And he had the ball every possession. Meanwhile, I'm watching the Clippers. I'm like, why the hell has Paul George got the ball every time? And then, Morris in the corner. Like, what are we doing here? Like, what is happening?
I would have loved to see a clip from the Clippers bench because, Chris, it's that raw emotion. That's why I love the NBA playoffs and The Bachelor so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Very similar. The only one, look, if there's a mic'd up, I want to hear Morris. That's who I want to hear mic'd up.
Great. Yeah.
Because he was like trying to roughhouse everybody at the beginning of that game. He got the tech. He's like yelling at Bogdanovich. I'm like, what has Bogdanovich ever done to anybody? Like, what are you yelling at him for? I can understand Ingles gets under people's skin. Gobert gets under people's skin. Maybe even Mitchell can get under your skin. But like Bogdanovich is like the easiest, he's never doing anything to irritate anybody. It doesn't seem. And yet he's up there in his face yelling at him. And Bogdanovich, I don't even think Bogdanovich knew what was going on. He's like, why is this guy mad at me? He's just mad all the time. But yeah, it was a highly entertaining game. It was. I think this is two very well matched teams that bring different things to the table. And, there'll be a chess match that goes on throughout the series.
What's your prediction for the series?
I do think that if they can get I think it's going to be very hard if they don't get Conley back. I do. Because, you are inevitably going to come up with some answers for what you want to do with the Mitchell situation, right? And I just think that in the absence of Conley, I do think there was a Game 7 2 days ago. You've got all the emotion. You're home. It's Game 1. And they didn't play well in the first half. They played great in the second half of that game. Got the Clippers in foul trouble. Clippers really didn't have, got Reggie Jackson to foul out. The rotation was kind of weird that Ty Lue put together. And so I think they need Conley to beat the Clippers. I do.
Interesting.
And so it's a hamstring, though. It's a hamstring.
Always hard with those. You never know.
Yeah, right? I mean, you're not feeling great about the prospects of a guy that's got a muscle problem, and so that's what
I
I'd
feel
say.
You there. I mean, it would sure as hell would make it easier to have Mike Conley. I'd pick Jazz in 6.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see if Conley comes back. I think if you're Utah, you still have enough, even without Conley. Joe Ingles can have better games. 1 of 8 from 3 tonight. He's a much better ISO scorer than he showed in this game. Mitchell, I mean, I know he just scored 45 points, but it was on 30 shots. He can even have better games. He can, and he has. Yeah. There's still an even higher ceiling for him. Bogdanovich can have bigger games for that matter as well. And
but this was a nothing Kawhi night, Kev.
It was. I mean, Kawhi can have better nights. I think a lot of guys on the court tonight can have bigger and better games and will throughout. But I don't think it's just the Clippers side. Like the Utah entire team can shoot better from 3. There's a higher ceiling for their best guys, and then there's the factor of Conley returning, and I would also add, too, I think Gobert can also have better games as well on the offensive end of the floor. I think there's more ways to exploit, as I said earlier, the switching defense with Gobert on the roll there. They kind of got flubbed up in that first half. I'd like to see how they adjust in Game 2. This is going to be a really competitive series. Like I say, Jazz in 6. I think like almost all competitive games. This is going to be a fun series.
I think they need Conley, and I also think, that's a 3-point win with Paul George being bad and Kawhi not doing much. And that's what this comes down to. Do your stars deliver? And the Jazz star delivered, man. He delivered in spades.
He did.
He was outstanding tonight.